Okay, good afternoon and welcome to this afternoon's education and training webinar for the Connect web platform. Today we're focusing on the Connect platform rather than the student app, and we're going to be looking at the Pathways Placement Progress Tracker. And what that basically means is that we've created a framework or a model that enables staff to see what they need or should be doing with students during the term of a placement, prior to the placement starting, during the placement, and after the placement, and giving senior leaders the ability to see that obviously if you've done it or not. And obviously then we can report that then into your data reporting through the data exchange service so that you can really offer clear overview about all the interactions that you've had with the student across the term of a work-based learning program. And it also obviously it's really good because it gives new staff a real good structure so they can see the kind of things that they're going to have to be doing with the student or interactions that need to take place with the student and the employer during the term of the placement. So we'll jump into it and we'll guide you through what this Pathways Placement Progress Tracker is. Okay, so as always, we jump into Connect, and we always use our demonstrator. So everything you see in here is obviously all fake, but once you get into Connect, through your dashboard, your access, you're going to be going to work on a particular student. So once you find the student that you're going to be working on, I click on the global list, and for the purposes of this, obviously you'd quick search your student through the filters, but I'm going to be working on Adam Sandler as my particular student of choice. And when you obviously get into their homepage, you get presented with these tiles. Obviously, they're all relevant to different parts of the system, and you guys are all used to, when it comes to placement management, this tile here. And this tile obviously gives you a breakdown of obviously where the student is on placement, where they're going, the number of hours they've done, their appraisals, their student feedback, any targets, any documentation. And obviously, this is where you can create placements. So what we're looking to do is this will be phased out for the Pathways Placement tile, which is here. And we're going to guide you through what that basically means. So if I click on the Pathways Placement tile, you'll see that straight away it looks similar. It's a little bit different, but it's similar. So we've got two sections to it, and the two sections are ready. So this refers to anything that you do with a student prior to any placement. You say it refers to a student's preparation for the placement experience. And then we've got real, which refers to any placements that they're assigned to. So ready and real. So we're going to focus first on ready, but you'll see that the real section, the placement section, is, it's very similar to what you're used to. These are the same placements, by the way. These two placements are these two placements. So I will explain to you what you're looking at, and obviously, although we're trying to keep it as familiar as possible, because obviously you're used to the system, so we haven't changed anything. All we've done is added, but we've added in a subtle way. So ready, what does ready mean? Okay, ready means that, the interactions, doesn't matter whether the student's going on placement, what have you done with the student to prepare them for the world of work? And you'll see we have a, Glenn will let them in, no problem. Jane will let them in. So what you'll see here is that the placement preparation follows a journey. So the first thing before any placement, you probably will have sought consent during the enrollment phase, and that can be updated in Connect through the import, the student import. So it'll also be a manual toggle, so you'll be able to manually override it. But generally, when they do the student import, this will be ticked, probably because MIS will have told us on the import that you have got the universal consent for a student to take part in a work placement program. So this will be an automated tick unless you can override it manually. Placement readiness program. So what interactions have you completed with a student during the term of the placement? And you'll see here, there's going to be a lot of info boxes. So it does help a new staff member to understand what we're asking of them. So this is a pre-placement activity that prepares the student for their time on work placement. This would include employability, life and social skill development, and focus on industry or career learning. So from there, if you've done anything like that, you'll be able to log those interactions, and you'll be able then to be able to mark this as completed. And you'll see that if I go into it now, you'll see that we've got a tick here. And there'll be what I've asked the developers to do today when I was testing. I wanted a date and times here and the person's name who did it, so that if these programs have been completed, they can be ticked here. And the next thing, as part of that placement readiness, you probably will have launched the mobile app of the student. So you'll be able to see if the student has had the mobile app invite sent to them, or if they've installed it. You will see here the students installed it on the date they installed it, or if they've not had it, if they've not been sent an invite at all. So again, you'll be able to keep a track on that. Have you encouraged the student to do the initial skills builder assessment? And with this student, obviously we've got a tick, and we can go in and click on this now, and it will take me away from the main Connect to go in and see what the student has assigned to themselves as the areas they need to develop. And obviously I'm not going to go through this now because we did a skills builder presentation a couple of weeks ago, but you think you kind of get the idea that, if they've completed their initial one, you'll automatically get a tick, and you'll be able to obviously go and see what they've said if you want to, or it'll not be ticked, and you'll know that you'll need to prompt that student to do the skills builder assessment before they go on placement. So we've got here first program enrolled completed. So you'll all know that we have a program builder where you can go in and create bespoke learning programs for students regarding employability, career, industry. And if you've assigned them to a program and enrolled them on a program, obviously you'll get a tick, and it'll tell you the total number of programs they've been assigned to and if they've completed them or not. So again, a good indicator for staff to see if students have had that additional support before even students been on placement. And again, it's easy then for you to track to see that those students have been enrolled on any additional work-related learning or careers programs. Industry interest is completed. So as part of the mobile app, students can log the kind of interest that they're in, the kind of things that they're interested in doing. It normally shows in the summary. So if a student is installed the app, it'll show here. And if they've logged the kind of industries they're thinking about, they might want to do a work placement in, it'll be logged here at the top. And if that's the case, you'll get a tick, and you'll be able to see obviously that they have submitted some industry interests. People always ask me about this. Why is it important? It was important for two main things. One, it's very easy then for the system for you to identify students that are unplaced and the types of placements they want to go to, so that you can then adjust your employer engagement strategy to meet those needs. But also it's to get a good idea of obviously the student's idea for their obviously career progression, which obviously in most cases will align hopefully with the course of study. And then you see here, we've got the final thing, which is they've sourced their first placement. So you can see here, this is actually the college have sourced the placement. So this is their first placement here that they've been assigned to. If they self-place, it would say self-placed. So again, you have a clear overview. You'll be able to see, where they're up to on this placement preparation process. And these are all the kind of interactions that you would expect for the student to get involved with, self-analyzing their skill sets, being prepared for the world of work. And it's just a nice evidence for you to see those interactions have taken place. And as I've said, a lot of them are automated because they're process driven. So something will have happened within Connect, and then the box will be ticked. Obviously, some of them you'll be able to override with the toggling. You'll be able to tick on it, but the system will then know, and you'll have to leave a note why, obviously, what you've done with them. And the system will be able to then say that, it was manually toggled by this staff member on this date. So you can override the ticks if you know that something's happened and it's not been logged in Connect. Okay, so I think ready makes sense. You can access this, the student URL is the student's personal access point into Connect if they're not going to use the mobile app. It's always shown here. Obviously, you can access it here. It's also on the student invite, but we've got a webinar in a couple of weeks. I think next week or the week after, I'm going to talk about what they can actually do with this URL and what they can do while they're in there. So real refers to now any placement. So basically, every single placement is going to have certain interactions that take place. And don't get me wrong, these aren't mandatory. These are just guides based on Gatsby, DFE, any reporting that you have to do depending on the placement type. But the whole idea being is that you don't have to do it, but it gives you a good overview of the things that you should be doing, and if you have done them or you haven't done them. So these two placements obviously replicate these two, and again, we've not taken anything away. So when this tail finally goes, you'll still have the same information, the employer details, so you can still go to the employer's homepage, the placement dates. We just need to add the hours on the end here. Add the hours from there, which is fine. We can see that this is a T-level placement, software development. We can see it's a business and strategic company. That's their full title, what the role is, software development. We can see that I created the placement. It wasn't a self-placement through the app. I created this manually on this date. And obviously we've got the employer's address. And then the same as you've got here, you'll still be able to update the placement, end the placement, delete the placement. You'll still be able to access all the documentation and paperwork. And you'll be able to submit attendance or help do the employer appraisal or submit the student feedback or email request the appraisals and feedbacks manually from here, or create smart targets. And the developers this will go back in as well, be able to view the appraisals, view the student feedback, view the targets. That'll be available for you here. And the bit that's different is this little drop down. And if we click on this little drop down, we're going to see a list. And this is specific to this particular placement. It's an overview of the 3 areas: pre-placement, placement, post-placement, and the things that you'd expect to take place during the term. And don't let this overpower you or worry you, because you actually do this anyway. It's just that it's never been logged in such a visual way to show actually all the stuff that you do with students during the term of a placement. The only difference is that this is a T-level placement, and if I just minimize it, this one is a work experience. It's slightly shorter. As you can see, it's not as big because you've got less documentation or less interactions because the placement isn't as long. And I'll explain what the differences are as we go through. So we'll focus on the T-level one as we go through the journey. So pre-placement, we've got 7 interactions that need to take place, and this is showing us that we've done 4 of those 7 interactions. First one, it will automatically tick. They've got their placement sourced, and it'll tell you who did it and when. The next one is placement consent has been secured. So again, this is not mandatory. On Thursday, we've created a really nice digital solution to managing consent for the placements for the employer, the student, the parent, and the guardian and the college. Slightly different. Again, it's not mandatory. So some colleges, some educators will be happy with the universal placement consent that you'll get at enrollment, and that should be good. If that's good enough for you guys, brilliant. Some colleges would like to get a consent on each placement, and that's what we've created here. So I'm not going to go into it today, but if the consent has been accessed through our digital solution, it will tick here. If not, obviously it won't be ticked. Industry placement tracking and contract sheet, that is a mandatory documentation for a T-level placement. And again, you'll be able to tick if that's been done and log it on the system. So they may have done their first skills builder, but skills builder, as we discussed a few weeks ago, is a pathway. It's pathway driven, and you don't be expecting the student to perhaps may have done it again multiple times before they've even started placement. So even though they've done it here, they may do it again, and you'll be able to see how often the student has done it. But in the worst case scenario is for you that they've done it once. So if they've done it here, it will show up here because, as once is the minimum. So you want to make sure that the student has done the skills builder assessment at least once before they started placement, and you obviously be able to see that here. Smart action plans, smart targets. So there's some functionality in here I'm going to show you today. It's listed here where curriculum, any staff member can set student smart targets. If they have, you'll see that it will be ticked here, and you'll be able to view them, or you'll be able to create some smart targets if they haven't been done from here. So this is where you've looked at the skills builder information, you've looked at all the other pre-placement information, and that with some particular students, you want to set some targeted actions for them while they're on placement, so they'll be able to then evidence that through the diary system. So again, it's giving the curriculum the opportunity to be, more course specific, or it might be, a student who's got health or social or emotional needs that you want to really give them some additional support about how they can what they need to do while they're on placement to improve those skill sets. So that's smart target. So you'll be able to tick, you'll be able to see if they've been done or not. Risk assessment makes sense, doesn't it? It tells you if the risk assessment's been completed prior to the placement starting, and it'll tell you when it's expiring. So if it hasn't got a tick, I'm assuming you're not letting the student on placement. If it has got a tick, it'll automatically tick and show you here that you had got the risk assessment completed before the placement started. And then placement induction, again, you don't have to do it, but if it's a mandatory requirement for your organisation, for a particular group of students that they have to do a placement induction prior to the placement starting, and you want to log that, obviously you can then log that now. So that's part of that pre-placement journey. So pre-placement, 7 activities, very similar to the work experience one, but this is 6 activities. It's just some of the mandatory documents. I think it is just the mandatory documentation that's been removed because it's not a mandatory field within the work experience journey. So apart from that, the things that you would be looking to do with a student will be logged here. Okay, so placement. So if we jump onto the actual placement started, you can see here with the CDF, tier level, extended work placements, there's 11 interactions. With a work experience placement, there's 7 interactions. So we'll just focus on this work experience one for a second. So placement begins, so it'll automatically tick. The student has started placement once we've got the first, when the first day starts. Obviously, we log the day that placement started. Then attendance, so either through your own attendance protocols with the attendance functionality in Connect or via the employer feedback processes, it will either tick the attendance has been completed or it hasn't. And if it hasn't, you just click on the update button and you'll be able to go in and update attendance if you want to. So again, it helps you track that you have been doing attendance with the student. Has the skills builder assessment been completed since the placement started? The system will know. So it'll only be ticked if skills builder has been completed since the start date, well, in between the start date and end date. So it'll know that the student has self-analysed during the term of the placement. And again, you'll be able to access that information. Has the student completed their placement diary? So we can see here this placement's got 10 placement days, and it's telling us then the number of entries we've got across those days. So you'd expect 1 per date. In a gold standard world, it's going to tell you what date, obviously, how many times the student has completed the diary entry. And if we just wanted to, I'm going to show you next week, but if I just jump into the URL from here, let's copy that. I'm going to leave Connect because the system knows I'm logged in. So I'm just loading up on the other screen. I'll drag it over what a student would see with the URL. Just loaded that up now. And if I just scroll down, and you'll see this placement. If I click on it, just to show you I'm not telling you any tales, you'll see there's diary entries here. So the student can submit their diary entries, and that will be replicated. It's not in the app yet, but it will be replicated in the app. So the student can submit their diary entry. Anything that they can do in this URL, they can do in the app as well, and vice versa. So so you'll be able to keep a track on number of diary entries on the placement. And then the next one here is obviously employer endpoint assessment. So as the employer fed back about, there's only one in here because normally work experience generally is a shorter term placement. So it's a worst case scenario. You'd expect the employer to feedback once during the term of work experience. And it'll tell you the number of appraisals that have been completed. Obviously, you'll see them anyway because it'll look very much like this. So you'll be able to access them. And then obviously, same with the student, as a student fed back, this particular student hasn't. So, we've not had one single feedback on this student. Do I want to email that request to the student? So we're trying to make your life as easy as possible so you don't have to keep jumping around the system to create. So, I'm just reviewing this one. A student has had a request. Right, let me just send that request off now. It'll log the date and who has sent the request and when it was sent. So you'll be able to then keep a track on that. And then an overall attendance. So it'll tell you the number of hours completed. This one here has only had 40 hours of attendance confirmed across the 80 planned hours. And if I just go up, so I've had 5 of the 7 interactions completed. If I go up, you'll see there's more here, but the only difference really here is that you have midpoint assessments as well as the endpoint assessments, and then also you have the college. There's college endpoint appraisal, there's an employer endpoint appraisal, and there's a student endpoint of feedback. So you've got some additional things to do across the term of these longer term placements. And some of this is automated. Those who are used to the system, these appraisal processes are caught on an automated safety net. So if the system tries to capture that for you, it'll tell you when it sent that request and when it was completed by any of the parties. So again, it's live data. So if it has been done, brilliant. If it hasn't, you know why, who, what, when, and then you've got the ability to re-request that information as you work your way down the list. And then the post-placement phase, we've got 3 interactions. I'm sure this will expand as the academic year goes on. But the 3 main interactions are, has a skills builder assessment been done after the end of the placement? And again, why we're saying this is because for the student to really show progression, this is what I said at the beginning before I went on placement. This is what I said during the placement. This is how I feel now after the placement. So again, we're looking really for the student to complete that assessment as a bare minimum 3 times. And again, it'll only tick if it's just the skills builder assessment has been completed after the end of the placement. Student placement debrief, have staff members, best practice, has a member of staff spoke with that student in a group setting or individually to offer them an arena to debrief after the placement is completed. And again, this will take on a new, we've got a new bit of tech coming that allows the completion of a debrief form by all parties. But for the purposes of now, you will be able to toggle if that debrief has happened and give a brief overview. And then obviously, you set some smart targets for the student. We would expect a staff member or somebody to actually review that with the student. And again, if that interaction has taken place, then obviously you can log that interaction has taken place. So then you obviously get a tick on the box. So let me just recap, because as much as it's new to you, it's new to me. We've been working on this now for a long time. I think we've got it to the point where it makes complete sense. It's user friendly. When it goes live, hopefully by the end of next week, it might look slightly different again, but nothing that would take away from this training session. It's more to do with data. So there'll be a lot more info boxes and a lot more grayed areas so that you can see when things have happened or if they haven't happened. But ultimately, it'll look very similar to this. So again, obviously you've got plenty of information within here. So let me just close this down. Pathways and pathways placements will be your new placement area. This section will be phased out. You'll have all the same information. You'll be able to do all the same things you could do in here as you can in here, like create a placement or mark a proposed placement or mark a student as not placement ready. You've got a new ready section, which allows you to log anything you've done with the student in preparing them for the world of work. And you have a real section whereby any placement that you do log here, you'll be able to see what you could see before, but then also manage and track the interactions that you should have or have happened during the term of placement that you would want to know have happened. And again, these aren't mandatory. These are guides, and they follow a pathway that has been that we've taken from the DFE and from Ofsted and from Gatsby and from your CDF T-level pathways. And so again, don't get too stressed that, what happens if we don't tick it? I mean, it's organizational. It's more of a guide for you to evidence the things that you have done. And actually, I think it's really nice. I think some people forget how challenging and how hard you do work to just do one placement. So when you're doing thousands, hundreds, and you're doing thousands, most of these boxes will be ticked, and it's just a great visual overview to show how much work you have done with these students during the term of the academic year and the term of a placement. So, so a lot of this stuff is automated. A lot of this stuff can be toggled, and it gives you a clear overview. The data will be exportable. The data will be part of your data exchange service, and I'm sure we will have to replace some of the dashboard charts to report slightly differently based on the information that's in here. So, Pathways Progress, I hope you found that interesting, that useful. I hope that it offers another level of support for new staff members. so that they can understand the kind of things and the interactions that you are going to do with a student. The system knows if the student is on a work experience or a extended work placement, T-level, CDF placement. So it will automatically know which tick boxes to show or which pathway to show. So yeah, you don't have to worry about doing that. The system will automatically create the pathway based on the placement type. So I hope you guys found that session useful. I'm sure I'll probably leave this I'll probably do it a couple months, and then I'll do another final pathways user guide that you can share with your staff. But for now, this will be edited and will be available in the newsletter at the end of the week. So thank you. I look forward to catching up with you on Thursday when we show you how the digital consent works. And thank you. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.